Bohidar is okay. She's a historian and art historian specializing in late medieval and modern South Asia. She holds a PhD in South Asia Studies from the University of Pennsylvania. Her research examines the intersections of the histories of the body, consumer culture, and emotions, with published work in leading journals such as South Asian Studies and Porn Studies. Her current project examines the modern history of Asian studies, of makeup in 20th century South Asia, situating it within the framework of vernacular capitalism, local innovations that shaped emerging discourses, consumption patterns, and exchanges, ultimately influencing later ideals of beauty and femininity. Her broader research interests span print history, visual culture, art history, and archival practices. So she's going to talk us today about promoting smell, taste, and wellness, a study of commercial Asafoetida in colonial South India. And with no further ado, Anannya, we listen to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. First of all, I'll tell you about the fact that I'm not a food historian as such. I work on the history of body and consumerism. The reason I am talking about this project now, it's because when I was doing my field work for my dissertation, I came across a lot of advertisements of Asafoetida. And what was striking was that apart from novelty food products like Ovaltine or some kind of a drink mix, I couldn't find anything related to food in the Indian or in the South Asian context. What I found was asafoetida and somewhere around from 1930s. So that made me think about this commodity, and that's how I that sort of because of this curiosity that I had, I wanted to take up it as a project, and I did apply for a few funding opportunities which I didn't get. So I was unable to do the field research for this talk today. But today I'm going to share whatever I have and whatever I'm thinking. So it's very raw. The argument is not finished, but I think this forum is also about talk about work in progress, and that's how that's what I'm going to look forward to, and look forward to your questions. I might not be able to answer all, but I'll try. So yeah, I'll just start. Yeah. In the early decades of the 20th century, advertisements for Laljee Godhoo Co. Asafoetida began to appear in Tamil and English newspapers across India. One such advertisement titled Indian Women's Responsibility opened with a striking invocation. From ancient times until today, Tamil women have always been renowned for their intelligence and refined taste. And then it moves to, a second person. You take pride in your homes, your families, and your cooking. You are the ones who ensure your homes are filled with happiness, prosperity, and good health. Just as you are careful in selecting jewels, saris, and flowers, you are equally careful about the ingredients used in your cooking. It is no wonder then that the asafoetida you choose is none other than LG Asafoetida, the finest and most trusted brand. Even the most skilled cook cannot bring flavor and fragrance to food without the right asafoetida. LG gives your dishes that special aroma and taste, which makes your family and guests appreciate your cooking all the more. LG asafoetida is made from the purest materials under the most scientific methods of preparation, ensuring the highest quality. Because of this, LG has become the preferred choice of women across India. Once you start using LG asafoetida, you will never again turn to any other brand. That's how pure and satisfying it is. In these lines, a commodity that did not even grow in India, asafoetida, or variously known as hingu, hengu, and perungayam, the dried resin of Ferula asafoetida, native to Central Asia and Afghanistan, is reimagined as India's pride. A foreign substance becomes a marker of Tamil womanhood, of domestic virtue, and of culinary refinement. This transformation from an exotic resin to an everyday kitchen essential is the subject of this paper. Drawing on advertisements, medical text, and recipe manuals, I explore how the commercialization and domestication of asafoetida in colonial India transformed it from an imported drug into an emblem of home, health, and taste. I situate this history within the fields of food histories and consumerism, examining how the circulation, packaging, and marketing of commodities shaped the making of Indian food in domestic modernity. Asafoetida's journey offers a lens to understand how colonial economies, vernacular entrepreneurship, and gendered consumer publics together redefine taste, purity, and boundaries between the foreign and the familiar. To understand asafoetida, we must look further back in history to another ancient herb called the silphium. Celebrated by the Greeks and Romans, silphium was so extensively prized that it was ultimately harvested to extinction. When the Greeks colonized Cyrene in present day Libya around 631 BCE, they encountered this extraordinary plant, which soon became the pride of the region. It was used as a vegetable, a seasoning, and even a fodder for animals, while also being credited with numerous medicinal benefits. Its value was so great that its image appeared on the region's coinage. By the 1st century CE, however, silphium had disappeared entirely. Despite regulations intended to protect it, the herb was repeatedly overharvested and overgrazed. Its reputation as a contraceptive further added to this fuel. Scholars have posited that silphium may have become extinct or perhaps survives unnoticed today in some weedy form. It has long been generally accepted that silphium was related to Asafoetida, a member of the Ferula genus, which has remained in continuous use since antiquity in both medicine and cooking. Even early classical sources describe Asafoetida as the closest available substitute for the rarer and more esteemed Cyrenian silphium. The transition from silphium to asafoetida marked an important moment in the history of plants and trade. Around 328 327 BCE, when Alexander's soldiers encountered asafoetida in Afghanistan, mistaking it for the lost silphium. They used it to aid digestion after eating raw horse meat, introducing the pungent resin that would later travel across centuries and geographies to become integral to the culinary and medicinal life of the Indian subcontinent. In the 17th century, the German physician Engelbert Kampfer journeyed to the Lahr region over the Persian Gulf to observe the collection of asafoetida resin firsthand. Kampfer was among a generation of European doctors employed by trading companies who traveled extensively in search of direct knowledge about the natural world. Serving as a physician with the Dutch East India Company, he visited Russia, Persia, India, Siam, the East Indies, and Japan between 1683 and 1693. His observations were later published in, I can't pronounce it, but I'll try, Aemonitatum Exoticarum, which was published in 1712, where 17 pages were devoted to asafoetida, including detailed botanical drawings and an illustration of the harvesting process he witnessed in 1687. And that's the image that you see. And I've given a modern image of the plant and how it is sort of harvested. And you can see the raw form, which Indians also use it. They actually dilute it in water and use, so when it dilutes it, they use that water, for example, making doughs or putting into dal or some kind of a curry. But it's very strong, so people generally use the commercialized version, which is a little less pungent. um, where was I? Okay. These pages were first translated from Latin into English by R. Carba in 1979. Camphors described asafoetida as a plant belonging to the umbelliferous family, growing wild in vast meadows of dry rocky mountains. The gum produced in the root was harvested each spring in 4 stages, from mid-April to early July, by peasants who climbed roughly 14 miles overnight to reach the fields. They cut away the stems and leaves to expose the root and collected the resin through successive incisions until the sap was exhausted, like a rubber plantation. The resin gathered in the third phase, known as pispas, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, was considered the finest and most solid in texture. Camphor also remarked that excessive harvesting had already depleted the number of mature plants, especially those over 20 years old, which yielded the largest quantities of resin. Asafoetida's botanical and geographical origins lie far from India. Derived from the roots of plants growing in the arid plateaus of Iran and Afghanistan, its trade into South Asia dates back centuries. Carried along trans-regional caravan routes connecting Kabul, Kandahar, and the northwestern frontiers with Indian bazaars. Given its geographic proximity, it is unsurprising that Asafoetida eventually entered India. The Kashyapa Samhita, which actually got translated in Chinese, and that's a very interesting point, because a lot of text, especially Buddhist text and Ayurvedic text, gets translated in Chinese, and the Chinese were heavily invested in buying Asafoetida. The one thing that is different from the Indian, their Indian counterpart, is that Chinese never used it for food. They found it really, really pungent, and Indians never call it the devil's dung because Indians love the flavor. But the Chinese were like, no, we're not going to use it. We are just going to use it for medicine purposes only. So the Kashyapa Samhita, one of the earliest Ayurvedic texts, records its import from Afghanistan. A reminder that Indian food, deeply rooted in Ayurveda, has long absorbed Asian, Persian, and European influences. Asafoetida stands precisely at this intersection. The Mahabharata mentions meat dishes spiced with asafoetida, suggesting its antiquity in Indian cuisine. Subsequent texts reinforce its culinary presence. For example, the 12th century Sanskrit text Manasolasa lists asafoetida among the seasoning for fish. So basically, to take away the fishy smell. The text also describes its preparation in hingu water, which is like a dilution of asafoetida in water, and its fumigation through hingu dhupa, a process of, we can sort of say something like tempering or flavoring something by using asafoetida as a fume. Um so, in another text called the Nimatnama manuscript of the Sultans of Mandu, which is in central India, a 15th century cookbook mentions recipes that use asafoetida mainly for flavoring and marinating meat. And the Nimatnama mentions asafoetida everywhere. And I think by that time they had understood the potential of asafoetida in culinary practices. I mean, there is definitely a longer history with respect to food, medicine, but the Nimat Nama keeps bringing asafoetida while making like sambusa or samosa or vada, or for that matter, marinating meat to take away the gamey smell, and also tempering and flavoring the fat, which is very, very similar to what we do now. How Indians use asafoetida is mostly they temper it in fat so that the asafoetida as a resin oozes its oil into the fat, and that's how the flavoring happens. And it's always in the beginning of the cooking. While the Aini Akbari, which was from Akbar's court, records its liberal use in Mughal kitchens, so much so that European visitors complained of its pungency. The Portuguese physician Garcia de Horta observed in the 16th century that affluent Brahmins and other Hindus liberally used the spice in their food, often as a digestive aid. By the colonial era, asafoetida had also found its way into Anglo-Indian cuisine, enriching game sauces with its distinctive aroma alongside chilies, cayenne, and wine. So you might recognize some of these brands, which is available in the West, especially One Devi and LG also, and Whole Foods also has its version of Asafoetida, and there is a gluten-free version also, which is interesting. Um, Europeans living in India were often called upon to act as doctors, both for their own servants and for poor people in the surrounding areas. At the time, there were very few hospitals in the city, only three, and many locals could not afford the transport needed to reach them. More importantly, a strong fear of hospitals prevailed among Indians, as many believe that dying there could lead to loss of caste and bring dishonor to their families. And I'm speaking, I forgot to mention this. This is an excerpt that I found in Anglo in a book published in 1849, wherein British artist and officer is writing letters to his mother and also sending sketches, and he talks about this. And I've paraphrased this quote. So, because of these fears, people either neglected treatment and relied on fate, or sought help from a European or the Christian Sahib. Collinsworthy Grant, the writer, himself had stocked up on cholera medicine, which he trusted deeply. And from his experiences treating locals, he claimed that whenever the medicine was given within 5 hours of the first symptoms, it never failed to cure by God's grace. So the remedy here referred to was the cholera pill. So there were cholera pills, cholera pill 1, 2, and you would always find this as a list within the list, which was distributed amongst the officers. And there would be, always carry this medicine, portable medicine chest, as they call it. Even as British doctors administered it as a scientific remedy, local patients often understood it through their own sensory and cultural logics as a substance of warmth, purification, and potency. In this way, Asafoetida's pharmacological life intertwined with the cultural biography. I wanted to show another picture of, so this is from a descriptive price list. So if you're aware of early 20th century, late 19th century, not pamphlets, but list of medicines that pharmacies used to, sell, they would give these booklets, and whenever you need something, you just write to them and they will send it to you. And in this particular, booklet that was published by Pandit D. Gopalacharu, who is also a very renowned Ayurvedic practitioner, and he was famously known for his, medicines for plague and cholera and menstrual disorders and many more. And in that booklet, you will find a list of vegetable and mineral drugs, list of things that one must have in their homes to, treat whoever is ill. Asafoetida, and it's called Hingu because, that's a Sanskrit name, was also a important, commodity. So I just wanted to like give you a little, sneak peek into where was asafoetida found. If it was, brought from so far away, how could people buy it? And I'll also talk about a little more about that. So, by the late 19th century, asafoetida status was shifting rapidly. The growth of urban markets in colonial India, coupled with improvements in transport and packaging, enabled its distribution far beyond elite or medical use. Bombay emerged as the principal hub for importing the resin from Afghanistan and Iran, where Indian trading houses, many run by Marwadi, Gujarati, and Tamil entrepreneurs, processed, branded, and retailed it to regional markets. Among these, and these, asafoetida would be brought in these sacks called, leather sacks that were used to carry water also, and they would put this asafoetida and seal the leather pouches, and then they would move from one place to another, because that would preserve its smell and its potency. So among these traders, Laljee Godhoo Co, founded in Bombay in 1894. According to popular lore, the idea to establish an asafoetida manufacturing enterprise came from a Kabuliwala who inspired its founder to venture into the trade of spice. So Kabuliwalas were very important part of the, if you've read Kabuliwala by Rabindranath Tagore, you will know how important that figure was. There's a lot of mystery, excitement, and also excitement of finding new things that were coming from Afghanistan, especially saffron from Herat would be brought, raisins, many kinds of dried fruits, and Asafoetida. So Kabuliwalas were itinerant traders who would bring dry fruits and spices from Afghanistan and sell it to the elites. The firm's earliest advertisements appeared in both English and vernacular newspaper, as we've seen, that targeted women, particularly Tamil housewives. The rhetoric of these advertisements illuminates how commercialization produced cultural naturalization. And I think that's my topic of interest. I talked about a lot about the history, but I think I'm interested in how something that was actually bought by elites slowly, or how did it sort of entered Indian kitchens. And for me, this commercialization by local entrepreneurs is a very important node. So that's what I'm interested in. The LG advertisements did not present asafoetida as foreign or exotic. Rather, they cast it as a substance inseparable from Tamil womanhood and domestic excellence. The housewife was not a passive consumer but an arbiter of taste and purity. She carefully examines the color texture of asafoetida before buying, just as she would assess jewels and flowers. Through this language, commercial advertising redefined the resin's foreignness, turning it into a signifier of discernment, refinement, and modern domesticity. Moreover, LG emphasized both purity and science in its branding. LG asafoetida is made from the purest materials under the most scientific methods of preparation. So the picture that you see here is from 30s, 40s. This is a shop, or like a kiosk kind of a thing in Kumbakonam, which is in Tamil Nadu. And the owners of LG Asafoetida were not Tamilians. They were Jains, Marwadis from Bombay. And for reasons, I mean, I'm not sure, but I think I'm sure, I don't know, but I'll not speak about it right now, is that they moved towards south. And one of the reason I think is because of the presence of the Marathas in Tamil Nadu that used a lot of asafoetida. And because that could be one of the reason. And the second reason is there was definitely an expansion of the asafoetida market, especially the commercial one, during this period, because a lot of cholera outbreaks happened in the late 19th, early 20th centuries, and other diseases. So asafoetida was also a very important ingredient in the Ayurvedic medicine and other kind of indigenous medicine that were available. So, this coupling of purity and science was crucial. It allowed the brand to appeal simultaneously to the colonial discourse of hygiene and quality control, and to indigenous notions of ritual and moral purity. Asafoetita's commercial modernity thus relied on the fusion of colonial technology and vernacular sentiment. Through packaging, advertising, and distribution networks stretching from Bombay to Madras and Kumbakonam, asafoetida became embedded in the early everyday life of middle class Indian households. Its commercial fame, rather than its medicinal efficacy, was what ensured its enduring presence in Indian kitchens. And that's my argument. Um, to connect this to broader food histories, we must understand that the emergence of modern Indian cuisines in the colonial period was not simply a matter of taste or tradition, but of commerce, gender, and class. The kitchen became a key site where the boundaries between indigenous and the colonial were negotiated. As scholars have shown, colonial encounters produced new ways of classifying and consuming food. Ingredients were increasingly differentiated by ideas of purity, health, and social mobility. Within this context, asafoetida's rise as a culinary essential must be read as part of commodification of taste, the process by which colonial capitalism reshaped sensory experience. Advertisement like those of LG Asafoetida not only sold a product but also sold a way of feeling. They taught consumers how food should smell, taste, and signify. The special aroma and taste promised by LG were not natural attributes of the resin alone, but the result of commercial redefinition. Asafoetida's pungency, once associated with ritual impurity or foreignness, was re-signified as the essence of authentic home cooking. This transformation paralleled other shifts in Indian kitchens: the adoption of tin ghee, branded spices, and pre-mixed powders. Like, for example, a lot of curry powder starts coming in, and all of which indicated the growing commodification of domesticity. As household manuals and cookbooks began to circulate among elite women, they increasingly referenced branded ingredients. Asafoetida became part of this modern culinary vocabulary embedded in recipes as both flavor and virtue. The advertisement that you see, no, not this one. Okay. So the advertisement that you see mentions wherever women are gathered together, shows a group of women sitting together on the floor, chatting with children nearby, a familiar domestic scene of social exchange. Beneath the illustration is the Tamil headline, Ekopitha Thirappu, which means one unanimous decision, followed by short dialogues between women named Lalita, Kamalam, and Vishalakshi. In their conversation, they all discuss their preference for LG Asafoetida, a branded spice used in cooking. Each woman shares her experience praising the brand's purity, freshness, and effectiveness in enhancing the taste and aroma of food. They agree that LG Asafoetida is far superior to other varieties, which leads them all to make a unanimous decision to use only that brand in their homes. The advertisement ends with a note encouraging all Tamil housewives to adopt LG Asafoetida and spread the word among their friends and relatives. What is particularly striking about Asafoetida's domestication is how deeply gendered its commercial narrative was. I mean, like most of the things, advertisements consistently addressed women as custodians of taste and moral order. The Tamil housewife, for instance, was portrayed as the gatekeeper of her family's health, happiness, and purity, and a figure whose authority was exercised through her choice of ingredients. By linking the brand's name to ideals of maternal care and culinary skill, the company effectively turned a commercial product into an extension of feminine virtue also. In the colonial middle class home, where the kitchen was being reimagined as a site of both tradition and modern science, such products became tools through which women performed their social identities. In this sense, the commercialization of asafoetida was also commercialization of femininity. The modern housewife was encouraged to see her discernment as both moral and national. That is, like pride rested in her ability to choose the purest asafoetida. The colonial kitchen thus became a microcosm of larger anxieties about authenticity, purity, and boundaries of the nation. Placing asafoetida within the growing scholarship on food histories helps us see how global commodities became local through process of translation, adaptation, and marketing. Historians of food have shown that ingredients are not static. They acquire meaning through their movement across geographies and their embedding in everyday life. Asafoetida's story resonates with broader histories of commodities such as tea, sugar, or coffee, substances that were transformed through colonial capitalism into symbols of domestic identity. Yet, unlike these, asafoetida's significance lies in its liminal position between medicine and food, between ritual and commerce. And that's what makes this interesting as opposed to, say, sugar or tea for that matter. In colonial India, asafoetida's incorporation into cuisine blurred these boundaries. Its use in tempering, a process that releases aroma through heat, was at once culinary, medicinal, and olfactory. It mediated between the sacred and the sensory, between the scientific and the ritual. Commercialization amplified this hybridity. By the early 20th century, brands like LG Asafoetida had turned a once foreign resin into an emblem of Indian authenticity. Its very foreignness became invisible overwritten by the rhetoric of purity, motherhood, and domestic virtue. In this way, Asafoetida's fame was not accidental but actively produced by the forces of colonial capitalism, vernacular modernity, and gendered consumption. Through advertising, packaging, and distribution, it entered not just kitchens, but the emotional and moral economies of Indian households. Um, yeah, I think that's it for now. I also wanted to show some few pictures that I had. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, you can see how there's a glorification of the household in a certain way. And later on, I think this was in the 40s, of course, the face of the female becomes, a selling point, and also the how emotions were cultivated, anxiety was cultivated, or you know, and more other emotions were cultivated. So I think, yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ananya. It was really, really interesting. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions.